Hey, good Sunday, everybody. Great to see you. Hopefully, we're having a wonderful end to the week out there and hopefully a wonderful start to November. I hope also that we're all kind of settling in all right to that time change that we had overnight. And yeah, it's just another sign of the times, if you will. Time moving quickly here already into November, and it's been a strange year. In some aspects, it feels like it has been a crazy quick year. In other aspects, it's kind of like when is this year going to end? But yeah, we are seeing very active weather out there, though, as we have seen much of this year. To kind of tie all of that in together here, with multiple storm threats, one in the tropics, in fact, kind of two in the tropics, and then a big time mid latitude cyclone over the lower 48, bringing big time mountain snow, as well as, unfortunately, a major severe weather risk that started yesterday night, where we had a bit of a tornado outbreak, depending on your definition of outbreak, I reckon, over portions of the southern plains, and that's continuing today into tonight and even into tomorrow, as this big storm system really brings a lot of lift and wind shear with it. So we're going to break all of that down for you in today's video. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Hit that bell for the latest notifications. Like the video and comment. Let me know where you're watching from. Just a little bit of the game plan today. We are going to start in the tropics and then move to that major storm system, and then talk a little bit about the long range. But so much is happening in the short range, we're really going to discuss that mostly. Also, for my regular viewers, you're probably wondering, well, why is this video coming out at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon? Well, I was at a Gamecock game last night in Columbia, South Carolina, which is about an hour and a half, an hour 45 from where I live in Charlotte. So I decided to spend the night in Columbia there, and then didn't get back into Charlotte until about 11 o'clock this morning. And I figured at that point, might as well just wait for the afternoon models to run, and then kind of just go ahead and digest all of those and break them down with y'all. So with that said, that's enough of me talking. Let's look at the weather now, because again, I'm going to ramble on forever if we don't. All right, current satellite imagery over the country and the western Atlantic. Again, here's this big storm system, all this cloud cover getting going over the central part of the country. Our center of low pressure currently is kind of in this region of Kansas and Colorado, really a classic Colorado low here, forming along this baroclinic zone of the Rockies and the western plains of the United States. Often where we see low pressure develop, just takes a little bit of some divergence aloft, and next thing you know, you got low pressure at the surface, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. And you'll notice causing a lot of problems with all sorts of storm activity over the plains. And again, we'll dive into that more in depth here later on in the video. But the other topic is in the tropics, and you'll notice all sorts of things happening down here. And with that said, let's go ahead and just move right to it and kind of break this down for you a little bit. So again, kind of two separate areas, I would argue, of potential development that we need to watch for. The big one, though, is this one right here into the southern Caribbean. In fact, you'll notice this is already kind of beginning to get tropical characteristics, and will continue to do so throughout the day today before likely becoming a tropical storm, which will have the name Raphael sometime overnight tonight into tomorrow, I think, is the most likely time frame. And this one will be a pretty big story for a lot of folks, not even just in the Caribbean, but even in the southeastern United States, where I do think we could get some pretty big time rain out of this storm system. But again, on satellite right now, definitely beginning to get its act together, and will continue to do so over the next little bit as it meanders through the Caribbean. All right, latest from the National Hurricane Center here, and you'll notice you're probably thinking, what is happening? It is, November, 3rd now, and the map almost looks kind of full in a way. Well, it does look active, and it is active for November standards, but Patty, not really a problem for anybody. That's a subtropical system that'll likely die off here pretty soon. So that really just leads this area in the Caribbean, and arguably most of it is kind of one storm. The red area you see and the little yellow area you see here are both kind of just two pieces of energy that are going to come together as one eventually, as our red area there really begins to kind of consolidate a little bit here and become a more organized system. Now, the other yellow area you're seeing out here north of Hispaniola, Cuba, and Puerto Rico, that does have the potential to become another named storm, but that probably wouldn't be for 5 to 7 days from now. And I think that one has a much less likelihood of bringing United States impacts compared to the red area, which likely will bring impacts to the lower 48, at least for areas of the lower 48. And we'll go ahead and dive into that right now. All right, so I do briefly want to talk about just the overall kind of ingredients on the map right now for potential development, and then go from there and then kind of break down the storm specifically. So again, a lot of people probably wondering, well, it's November. Why are we getting a storm to even form in the first place? Well, all things considered, the ingredients are still there for a storm, especially in the Caribbean where this one happens to be forming, with very warm sea surface temperatures still up and around 30 degrees Celsius. That's in and around the upper 80s for Fahrenheit, which is obviously, again, more than enough to bring tropical development. Now, another thing I want to point out on this map is look at how the ocean temperatures cool off significantly here along the Gulf Coast from Florida and the Keys all the way back to Texas. We are in that time of the year where these shelf waters are beginning to cool down more and bring less favorable conditions for development near the coastline. So that will be a pretty big limiting factor, I think, in any sort of storm upon landfall in the southeastern United States, is again this pretty big area of cooler ocean temperatures as well as dry air, as we will look at here in a second. But while the storm's in the Caribbean, again, plenty of favorable conditions to work with for potential development. All right, the other thing to look at here is wind shear. And again, red is above average wind shear, blue is below average, red is unfavorable, blue is favorable for tropical development. Now, currently, you'll notice this tiny little blue dot down here. This is our storm, and overall, it's in a pretty unfavorable environment. But as we move this ahead into time, we are expecting this to become more favorable as this area kind of becomes a little bit more blue in nature, and again, likely to support more tropical development, and really stays pretty favorable in the wind shear department here through the middle of this week as the storm crosses Cuba and gets into the Gulf of Mexico. And, given the way this year has gone and previous years, you're probably thinking, well, I mean, we're looking at this. There's a storm forming in the Caribbean, moving into the Gulf with favorable wind shear. We just talked about warm ocean temperatures, at least in the Caribbean. This thing could be explosive. Well, not so fast, because again, while these ingredients do look quite favorable, and again, you'll notice that low wind shear hangs around even for a while, and this will be important as well into about a week from now as that next storm system gets going that we talked about potentially into this region. Again, low wind shear for that one as well, but something that is going to be an inhibiting factor is dry air. And you can see that here on this map. Again, these brown kind of orange colors are a lot of dry air, which really helps to beat down these tropical systems. And you'll notice on the latest GFS, this thing gets kind of surrounded on all sides by dry air by Wednesday afternoon. You'll notice a big pocket of dry air in the Gulf, a big pocket in the Southwest Atlantic, and then what would be Raphael kind of stuck in between there, between the two, kind of on its own volition. So definitely, again, some inhibiting factors. We have those cool ocean sea surface temperatures along the coastal areas of the Gulf Coast. We have all of this dry air. So again, I think the storm does form. I think it could even potentially hit hurricane strength, but if it does, it's likely to happen right into this region of the Caribbean before making landfall into Cuba. And then after that, dry air helps to work against it, and again, some cooler sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico, as again, it is November after all. We're not talking about late September Gulf of Mexico shenanigans like maybe we were with Helene or even Milton, which had much more favorable conditions to develop. One more thing I will also add on this map as well before I move on. Now, although we do have all of this dry air, I do want you to notice this big slug of moisture that the system does bring up from the tropics with it. So that does not mean that the southeast is going to avoid rainfall with the system. In fact, quite the opposite. I think we could see a good amount of rain in some places, maybe more even than we need, although we are in drought conditions through the big section of the southeast. You don't want too much at once, and this one, unfortunately, might bring a little bit too much at once, which obviously is a bit of a sore subject with a lot of folks due to what Helene did. But again, not expecting a Helene out of this, but we could still see flooding. Definitely is a potential, I think, with Raphael on down the road here through the next couple of days. Or I say next couple of days, through the week, I should add. Okay, so what is steering the system? Where is it going? That's kind of the next system, or the next topic we need to discuss here with this one. And if we look at our steering currents into the upper levels of the atmosphere, this is Wednesday morning. At this point, the storm probably down here near Cuba, and you'll notice we have this upper level ridge of high pressure. And what's going to kind of happen here is this ridge is going to pick up the storm and slingshot it generally towards the Gulf Coast of the United States, probably somewhere from Louisiana to the Florida Panhandle, and then it's likely going to get picked up by the jet stream here and accelerated pretty quickly. And that is one of the reasons that we could see a lot of moisture out of this really get brought up into the southeastern United States. That combined with a front crossing the country, again, does spell potential flooding concerns, which we'll need to watch. And you can see that track pretty well on the latest model guidance. These spaghetti models just came out basically right before I hit the record button on this. And again, you'll notice that track through southern Cuba, likely missing the island of Jamaica just to the south west there, or let me see, yeah, southwest of the island. By the way, I posted this on Twitter. Many of you probably watch Ryan Hall, and again, I'm about to diverge and talk about something completely different, so if you don't want to listen, skip ahead. But I posted something I thought was funny. Ryan Hall now has an AI robot on his live streams that answers some of his questions, which obviously is really cool. And I posted on Twitter, I was like, all right, well, Ryan Hall has an AI robot, and GMWeather can offer a college kid who's just trying to remember what direction is north, south, east, and west. And the reason I made that joke is because of what I just did. Oftentimes, I will say a direction, and then I'll think, is that actually the right direction? And then I have to do the never eat soggy waffles thing in my head, and it's really just a whole catastrophe. But anyway, I figured I'd throw that in there. I thought it was kind of funny at the time, but only got a couple of likes, so maybe other people didn't think so. But I thought it was funny. So anyway, back to the weather. Again, this is I don't even know. This we're derailing already, but that's okay. So here's the track again for Rafael, as we just talked, through Cuba, and then up into the Gulf Coast of the United States. All right, what about intensity? Also, could you see that? Yes, you could. Awesome. Intensity for this system, well, again, has the potential to hit hurricane strength, but I want you to notice the trend. Increasing in strength over the next couple of days, then right into here where you see all of these models kind of flatline in intensity, that's the Gulf of Mexico. So it's Caribbean, Cuba, Gulf of Mexico, and then approaching landfall. So what's happening is, again, it's increasing intensity through the Caribbean, low wind shear, warm sea surface temperatures, and relatively moist air. Hits Cuba. Again, not going to do much to disrupt the storm. It's going to be a pretty, quick pass over a pretty thin island. And again, it could even miss the island a little bit. But then what happens again into this part of the graph through the middle of this coming week is cooler sea surface temperatures and more dry air. That helps to weaken the storm, or at least, prevent intensifying. And then again, it hits those cool shelf waters upon approach and weakens back down into a tropical storm, or maybe even just a remnant low, I think, upon landfall in the United States. All right, well, let's time it out for you here and tell you when you can expect what. This is tomorrow evening. Again, a tropical storm just south of the island of Jamaica. Could even clip the island. That's not out of the question here, according to the latest GFS model. Then it moves up towards Cuba, again, continuing to strengthen. Likely a tropical storm, borderline Category 1 hurricane at landfall in Cuba. And then it hits the Gulf of Mexico Wednesday morning. And that induces, again, that just leveling off in intensity, likely not strengthening, probably even weakening a little bit Wednesday afternoon into Thursday morning near the coast of Florida, and then stalls a little bit due to some breaking down steering currents, but then finally moves inland. This would be this coming Friday evening into Louisiana on this model, as again, really a pretty weak low that would really just bring a rainfall concern and not really a surge concern or a wind concern, definitely not with this sort of setup. And then look behind it, there's that next area that NHC talked about, and that one, just to quickly throw this one ahead into time, moves through the Bahamas into the Keys of Florida, and then kind of dies in the Gulf of Mexico due to some dry air. And again, that might not even happen. Who knows? That's so far into the future. But we will discuss it more as we get further on down the road for sure. All right, well, that's the tropics. Let's go ahead and talk about what else is happening. And again, a big-time storm system ongoing. So I want to show you the current surface observations across the country because it's very important for kind of breaking down what's to come. We'll start in the east, big-time high pressure over the northeast. This has led to some pretty impressive cold air damming across the eastern United States. So much cooler in this area than other parts of the country. While that's happening, I'll also add that we are getting kind of due to the same high pressure, big time return flow out of the Gulf of Mexico. This is leading to high surface instability across the southern plains. That's helping to fuel these thunderstorms. That combined with our mid-latitude cyclone, or that Colorado low I mentioned earlier forming here, is leading to, again, overall a big-time severe weather risk in that warm sector. And again, our warm front kind of stretches out like this right now. So anything to the south in here is in that warm sector and thus running that severe weather risk. And on the backside of this, well, it's cool and it is snowy in the Rockies, specifically through the Four Corners. as we're getting a lot of orographic lift, sorry, as all of the Pacific air hits the mountains as it's trying to funnel into this low pressure system. So a lot of snow happening, a lot of severe weather happening, a lot of rain happening, a lot of everything happening. And yeah, we go to the surface map with radar and watches and warnings, and you can see what I mean when I say a lot is happening. A ton of rain falling this Sunday across the Midwest from Wisconsin down through Iowa, Chicago, up into the UP of Michigan, even into the Minneapolis area. Luckily, all of this is just being induced by our warm front, creating a lot of lift. Same story up here with another bit of troughing extending from our low pressure into the northern plains. So these two areas not seeing severe weather, but to the south, we are seeing severe weather here through Oklahoma and Texas. Because of that, flood watches in effect, tornado watches, severe thunderstorm watches, a very active scene through this region. Yeah, just really a whole mess. And then you get to the Four Corners, again, a lot of mountain snow falling, winter weather advisories up for those higher elevations, and even winter storm warnings in effect for the higher elevations up into Washington state as another powerful storm system likely to move through in the coming days. And we will discuss that in a moment. But first, let's get to that severe weather threat today. We do have let me see here. Yeah, we have a marginal risk, or not a marginal risk, an enhanced risk, I believe, if I can read the map correctly. Yeah, so kind of hard to see a little bit here, but because there's so much on your screen. But this little area right here is our enhanced risk for severe weather. The yellow box you see is a tornado watch here through portions of Oklahoma. This box in here is a severe thunderstorm watch, and that slight risk going all the way up into Joplin, Missouri, into Fort Smith, Arkansas, and then back down into the San Angelo area of Texas. And most of this today, and again, this goes into tonight, is being driven off of a tornado threat. Had a lot of tornadoes last night. We're probably going to do it again today. In fact, already 2 tornado warnings. And you know what, just out of pure curiosity, and so I can show off this website a little bit, this is weather-wise. Let's take a look at some of these tornado warnings. And again, by the time you're watching this, these will be moved on far from this, but just out of my own volition. And again, weather-wise, great app here. You can get it for iPhone and iOS. Yeah, I'm seeing definitely some spin here on velocity in these regions. Again, and that's why we have those tornado warnings in effect. So definitely something we're going to see a lot more of today, I think, as these storms roll on through. And that's not the end of it. Tomorrow, another severe weather threat, including tornado threat, a little bit further east. So that tornado threat shifting off towards eastern Oklahoma, northeastern Texas, into western Arkansas, southwestern Missouri. Again, that threat continuing in the severe weather department. And then just the overall outlook for tomorrow. Again, kind of same thing, just a bigger area with more severe weather potential. And then luckily we get to day 3, which would be Tuesday, if my math serves me correct. And then at that point, the severe weather threat comes down pretty significantly across the country. All right, so let's talk about the severe weather threat a little bit more in depth here. Again, a brand new model just ran here from the high resolution rapid refresh tonight. Kind of a bit of a convective mess, but it's into that region again of the warm sector that we need to watch for severe weather potential, including again that tornado threat overnight tonight, that low level jet once again ramping up. As we often see during the evening hours out here, that could help to promote more tornadoes. Again, I wouldn't even be surprised to see a couple that could become quite strong, much like last night we had big damage. So nocturnal severe weather threat and a nocturnal flooding threat. Notice how all this rain trains over some of the same areas. So we'll need to watch for that. And then we get into tomorrow morning, and we're going to start again with the same thing. Now, tomorrow afternoon will be really important. Let me phrase that. What happens tomorrow afternoon will depend a lot on what happens in the morning. Again, it's all about this warm sector. How clear is it? Is there going to be convection in the morning? Is it kind of clear in the morning? Does that destabilize things and add some convectively available potential energy, CAPE, and or also known as thunderstorm fuel? It's going to be very important. But should we get any destabilization, look at this, another big flare-up of strong to severe storms tomorrow afternoon in the region, bringing again that tornado threat. And I'll even add, look at what's happening in the southern Rockies at the same time, overnight tonight into tomorrow. Big time snow falling out there, and we'll talk about some of those snow totals in a minute. But some of that snow could even break out into the extreme western panhandle of Oklahoma tomorrow afternoon as we get some of that upper air dynamic cooling that gets brought to the surface, could change to some wet, heavy snow. So tomorrow in Oklahoma, we could be seeing snow and severe weather in the same state at the same time, which would be Not that uncommon for Oklahoma in all honesty, but still kind of interesting to think about as all of this works on through for our Monday afternoon into the evening. And I do think overnight tomorrow, this turns into much more of a squall line that likely extends all the way from Texas up into Illinois. And even really further north than that. And then that'll swing on through during the overnight hours of Tuesday and into Tuesday morning. Again, watch for a severe weather threat down near the Gulf here. A lot of instability still, just enough kinematic support here probably too as this low pulls northward, but could see some overlapping ingredients for severe weather Tuesday morning there through Arkansas, Louisiana, and even probably portions of Missouri. So again, a lot happening there. I know kind of maybe breeze through that a little bit, but I'll show you this map as well. These are updraft helicities, or just kind of where we're seeing spin in the atmosphere. This is tonight. Notice all of these tracks for potential supercells tracking on through Oklahoma. This is past sunset now into the Ozarks, into Missouri overnight tonight. So anyone in those areas, you got to have a way to get watches and warnings tonight, and then watch what happens tomorrow. We add on with more tracks of potential supercells during the afternoon and evening hours into these regions. And in fact, I'll even move the map to some other areas as well just to show you these updrafts. Again, this is overnight tonight, and then this is tomorrow and overnight tomorrow. Look at some of these updrafts, even getting up into northern Illinois, could see some strong storms during the Monday evening and overnight hours. So again, a lot of severe weather for a lot of folks that need to have that on your radar, no pun intended. Yeah, there we go. Anyway, again, it's not really funny, but it is serious though. So again, you have to have a way to get those watches and warnings for sure. Okay, let's zoom things out here because again, I know not everyone lives in those areas and other folks are also seeing rain and some other impactful weather. In fact, I'll also talk about something I think that could be a little bit of a surprise tomorrow for some folks, but this is tonight. Again, a whole lot of rain up into the Midwest through Wisconsin, Michigan, even getting up into portions of Canada. A lot of shower activity into the northern plains as well. It's going to be a bit of a mess into some of those areas. And then obviously all the severe weather we just talked about, heavy rain, even working into portions of Arkansas into tomorrow morning and into really, honestly, just much of the country seeing a lot of rain. So I'm not going to name every place that's seeing it, but again, that big swath of rain due to all of that lift from this low pressure and some upper level ingredients. Now, surprising tomorrow. What could be a surprise? Well, it's going to happen here in the Carolinas, I think. And I say I think because it's not set in stone, but if you look at a lot of the forecasts from some forecasting agencies, whether that be local meteorologists or the National Weather Service, a lot of folks going with highs up into the upper 60s and low 70s into this region of South Carolina and North Carolina. Well, I'm going to say hold your horses a little bit because we've got some pretty impressive cold air damming still ongoing into this region. And that very cold air at the surface is likely going to enhance some lift. And I'm not going to get into all the science here, but just know I do think we'll see some showers into this region tomorrow of western Georgia, or excuse me, eastern Georgia, and into South Carolina and the southern half of North Carolina. I think some folks might struggle to crack the 60s tomorrow. I really do. We're going to have these drizzly conditions, these very cloudy conditions. And I do think someone's going to get a surprise, nice fall day tomorrow in that region. Now, is everyone going to see that? No. Some folks might start with that way as a fall-like morning. Then by the time afternoon arrives, the sun comes out and kind of mixes up those layers a little bit. But I foresee a little bit of a surprise here in the forecast for some folks tomorrow. So watch out for that. You'll notice those showers work on through Monday afternoon while all of our rain even gets into the northeast. Look at that. Some snow mixing in up into northern Maine overnight Monday into Tuesday. And then we get into Tuesday morning here and into Tuesday afternoon, just this big old squall line, low pressure right here. And then just a big old kind of good old comma head look here to this storm system. Really pretty classic looking mid-latitude cyclone with that warm front to the north, cold front to the south, and bringing a whole lot of lift and a whole lot of rain for a lot of folks. All right, out west, well, the story out here is snowfall. Again, a lot of snow into the southern Rockies, especially overnight tonight into tomorrow. Look at this, New Mexico and Colorado tomorrow. Yep, checking in on a lot of snow into those ski resorts. And same thing up into the Pacific Northwest. Look at this, another big storm system tomorrow. This is why we have winter storm warnings for the northern mountains there of Washington State into the Cascades and even down into Oregon. Going to see some big snow as that system moves on through and then bring some snow into the northern Rockies up through Montana, Idaho, Yellowstone. This would be Monday evening and overnight into our Tuesday. So active weather out west as well with some snow out that way. And we zoom everything out here and kind of give you a summary of everything to come. Again, a pretty active time ahead. So we'll pick up where we left off on Tuesday afternoon here. Here's our storm system. Again, center of low pressure up into Wisconsin, warm front extending up into Canada, cold front extending back down into the southern plains, and clearing behind that. You'll notice much nicer conditions, I think, for our Tuesday afternoon compared to some of these other time frames before Tuesday. But then look at this, low pressure dies out, and then all attention turns to that Gulf system, which could bring a new slug of moisture. And guess what? It's back, another storm system into the southern plains by next weekend. That could again bring severe weather and snowfall. And I think that's going to probably combine with our Gulf system a little bit. And this is when we'll need to watch for a big slug of moisture out of the Gulf into the southeast and up into the Ohio River Valley, as well as the Mississippi River Valley for next weekend as that storm system crosses on through. All right, rainfall. Well, let's kind of take this step by step here. So through the next couple of days, obviously a whole lot of rain into the southern plains, a whole lot of rain up into the Midwest as that storm system tracks on through. And you'll even notice some rain into the Carolinas tomorrow. I mentioned that I do think we'll see some tomorrow, even into Tuesday, due to that kind of setup I mentioned. But this is when things really go downhill for the southeast weather-wise. Look at this. All of this precipitation building up. This is Wednesday into Thursday into Friday into next weekend. I do think some folks into South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida could receive a lot of rain out of this. Now, we're hoping that rain doesn't get all the way into the mountains of North Carolina and areas impacted by Helene. Let me rephrase that, a little bit of rain, but we don't want a lot at once through some of these areas. And unfortunately, I do think there will be a bit of a flooding risk somewhere in the southeast. Now, this map shows pretty big, area of rain over Georgia and South Carolina, but I would argue confidence is a little bit lower than maybe what that is showing. So come back in time, this could shift towards this direction. It could shift that way. It could shift this way. Again, but I think somebody's going to get a lot of rain during the middle of this week. And you'll notice after we get to about 10 days out, really most of us getting back in on some pretty beneficial rain through much of the country. Now, not everybody, but a lot of folks are going to see some rain. Snowfall-wise over the next 10 days, again, big winners are all going to be out west, especially you folks in Colorado and New Mexico. I mean, we're talking feet of snow over the next 10 days. In fact, I'll just very quickly zoom into a couple of these areas to show it to you. Well, that might not do the best, but yeah, actually, let's change that to this area. Might show it a little bit better. Let's see here. Yeah, so again, look at this into Colorado, New Mexico. I mean, we're talking about 55 inches plus of snowfall in some of these highest peaks. A lot of snow on the way for the Southern Rockies, and not just the Southern Rockies, the Northern Rockies as well. Again, this is going through the next 10 days, but you get the point. A whole lot of a whole lot of snow rather for a whole lot of people. Alrighty, folks. Again, I appreciate you hanging in there with me. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Like, subscribe, comment, all the things. Stay safe, obviously, is another one. Have a way to get those watches and warnings. Yeah, and I will see you all tomorrow.